In 1984, Kristy McNichol was filming a movie in Paris when her body started to shut down. She dropped to 96 pounds. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't eat. Production stopped for an entire year because she simply couldn't continue. The studio called it a chemical imbalance. But the truth went much deeper than that. Years of working since age 6. Years of hiding who she really was. Years of trying to make everyone happy except herself. It all caught up with her at once, and what happened next changed everything. Kristy McNichol came into the world on September 11, 1962, in Los Angeles. And from her first years, she lived in a house where work never stopped. Her father built things with his hands, and her mother worked long nursing shifts just to keep the family steady. They lived in the San Fernando Valley, surrounded by noise and movement. And Kristy grew up watching two parents push through long days without slowing down. Her mother carried her Lebanese Christian roots with her, and her father brought Scottish and Irish ancestry into the mix. And this blend slowly shaped the look that later made Kristy stand out in every room she walked into. By the time she turned 6, she was already stepping in front of cameras for local commercials. She didn't fully understand what it meant, but she knew her parents needed the help. And she knew she had something that made people watch her. Those early shoots planted the first seeds of a future she never planned for, but eventually embraced. Life changed fast when her parents divorced. She was only 3 when it happened, but the effects stayed with her. Her mother suddenly had to raise 3 kids on her own, and with no support from her ex-husband, she took extra shifts and worked until her feet went numb. Kristy grew up inside that pressure. She later said, "She never had the kind of childhood where you wake up and wonder what games you'll play. Instead, she woke up and prepared for auditions, shoots, and long days in front of strangers holding cameras." Between 1973 and 1976, her schedule looked like something designed for an adult. Commercial shoots filled her days. Auditions filled the rest. Childhood slipped past her in small pieces, replaced by a career that demanded every bit of her energy. The weight of it shaped her deeply. It built resilience, but it also left shadows that followed her into adulthood. Years later, when she struggled with her mental health, she traced part of it back to those early years where she had no choice but to keep performing. Her striking look came from the same mix of cultures that made her family unique. Her Lebanese roots gave her dark features and warm skin, while her father's side brought sharper lines and lighter tones. Hollywood noticed that look right away. Casting directors loved it because it made her different at a time when most young actresses blended together. And Kristy took pride in that mix. She often said her background helped her understand people better and helped her connect with audiences on screen. She didn't just act. She made people feel like she understood something about them. And her look, her voice, her quiet intensity, all flowed from those cultural threads woven into her from birth. Even though the pressure was heavy, small moments of luck appeared at the right time. One of those moments came through a family friend. Desi Arnaz, the legendary mind behind I Love Lucy, helped open doors for Kristy and her brother Jimmy. He pushed them toward early commercial work that would have been out of reach for a family still fighting to stay afloat. Kristy loved telling the story about the time she casually mentioned to a director that Desi Arnaz had sent her. The director looked at her twice, nodded, and hired her on the spot. By the time she was 6, she was already a working actress, and by 14, she stepped into the role that changed everything. She became Buddy Lawrence on the ABC drama Family, and from the moment she arrived on set, everyone saw she had something beyond talent. She had spark, she had timing, and she had that mix of innocence and grit that made audiences believe every word she spoke. Kristy wasn't the only one trying to break through. Jimmy was right there with her, pushing for his own roles, building his own momentum. Their bond was a mix of rivalry, teamwork, and deep loyalty. They acted together in commercials, and in 1978, the two of them co-hosted a youth variety show for ABC. Jimmy became a heartthrob, but even then, Kristy's performances in Family and Little Darlings often pulled more attention. Still, they stayed close. When Kristy later struggled with bipolar disorder in the 1980s, Jimmy never drifted. He stood with her through the fear, the confusion, and the long path toward stability. Their relationship carried the marks of two kids who grew up too fast and held on to each other whenever the world pushed too hard. Kristy's rise felt like it happened overnight, even though she had been working for years. Playing Buddy Lawrence in 1976 became the moment everyone remembers. She was only 14 when she joined the cast, yet she brought a level of honesty that even the adults around her admired. The show tackled real issues, and Kristy carried many of its emotional moments on her shoulders. She wasn't related to anyone in the cast. She wasn't discovered in some dramatic way. She simply walked into the audition room and lit it up. Soon the country knew her name. That role shaped television history and made her one of the most recognizable young stars in America. Her talent didn't just impress viewers, it impressed the industry. In 1977, at only 15, she won her first Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actress. She was too young to drive in most states, yet she stood on that stage holding a trophy as one of the youngest Emmy winners in history. 2 years later, she won her second Emmy for the same role. Reporters still remember her calling the two trophies her bookends. Those wins weren't just awards. They showed how deeply she connected with audiences. People didn't just watch her, they believed her. By 1980, her popularity pushed the network to upgrade her from supporting to lead actor, something that rarely happened. Her nomination for Outstanding Lead Actress that year confirmed what everyone already knew. She was the heart of the show. She evolved with Buddy, carrying the character from a young girl into a more complex teenager, and the audience followed every shift with her. That nomination stands as one of the major milestones in Emmy history because it showed how powerful a young performer could be when given room to shine. Even while working full-time on Family, Kristy found ways to stretch her range. She appeared on shows like Starsky and Hutch, The Bionic Woman, Love American Style, and The Love Boat. Each appearance helped her step into new characters and prove that she wasn't limited to a single type of role. Viewers loved seeing her show up in unexpected places. Producers loved working with her because she delivered every time. Those guest roles helped her reach millions who might never have seen Family and pushed her fame into every corner of television. In December 1977, she took the stage with Karen Carpenter for The Carpenters at Christmas, a holiday special that pulled in more than 25 million viewers. She sang Christmas Alphabet and joined in comedy sketches and group numbers. That night showed the country that she wasn't only an actress. She could sing, she could perform live, and she could bring warmth to a national audience during the holidays. It became one of the performances fans remembered most, especially because seeing her beside the Carpenters made her feel even more like a star. Then, in June 1978, Kristy and Jimmy released their disco album on RCA Records. It carried songs like He's So Fine, which climbed to number 70 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album's launch party at Studio 54 brought stars like Burt Reynolds and Brooke Shields, and for a moment, Kristy and Jimmy felt like they were riding the same wave as the biggest names of the era. The album sold around 100,000 copies in its first year. It didn't become a massive hit, but it carved out a quiet place in pop culture history and still sits on the shelves of 70s collectors who love its bright energy and sibling chemistry. That same year, the two of them co-hosted the All-Star Saturday Preview special for ABC. It aired in September 1978 and featured Donny Osmond, Adam Rich, and other young stars. They performed songs from their album and mixed music with comedy and interviews. 18 million viewers watched that special. People loved seeing the McNichol siblings together, sharing the stage like they had grown up doing. It marked a high point in their shared career and captured the playful, colorful spirit of late 70s television. Kristy McNichol's first step into film came in 1978 when she appeared in Burt Reynolds' dark comedy, The End. And the moment she walked into that world, Something about her presence made people stop and pay attention. She played Julie Lawson, the daughter of Reynolds's character, and even though her role was small, it carried a spark that made it feel larger. The film followed a man facing a terminal illness who kept trying to end his own life, and somehow kept failing, drifting from one attempt to another until he landed in a mental institution where he met a character played by Dom DeLuise. Kristy found herself sharing scenes with Sally Field, Strother Martin, Joanne Woodward, and Myrna Loy, giants in the room, yet she looked natural among them. Reynolds later said he changed the movie's original ending to offer hope, letting Sonny survive instead of closing on the darker version they first shot. The movie came out on June 2nd, 1978, and critics were mixed about the story, but many noticed the teen girl who carried herself like she had been doing this for years. That same year, her work took a dramatic turn when she starred in the TV movie Summer of My German Soldier. The story unfolded during World War II and followed a Jewish-American girl named Patty Bergen, who discovered a German POW on the run and hid him in her attic. Kristy played Patty, and the weight of the character pulled something deep out of her. When the soldier was discovered and Patty's world collapsed, her father delivered a line that cut straight through the screen, telling her, "You are dead to me." That single moment showed how much she could carry at such a young age. The film aired on CBS on December 17, 1978, and critics praised her for the way she handled the emotional complexity without slipping once. It was the role that proved she was far more than a sitcom star. By 1980, she was standing shoulder to shoulder with her brother Jimmy in the thriller, Blinded by the Light, and the story pulled her into another intense world. Jimmy played a teenager who ran away to escape a strict religious cult, and Kristy played his sister Janet, who tried to rescue him only to find herself nearly pulled inside the cult's grip. It aired on CBS on April 13, 1980, and audiences were struck by how real the brother-sister connection felt on screen. The film tackled themes people usually avoided, and the boldness helped it become a ratings success. In 1978, she also starred in Like Mom, Like Me with Linda Lavin, bringing life to the friction between a teenage daughter and a newly divorced mother trying to start over. The story moved through new relationships, emotional storms, and shifts inside their home as they tried to rebuild something broken. Kristy's ability to jump from humor to heartbreak gave the film an edge that helped it draw in viewers. It was one more step in proving she could handle any emotion a script handed her. All of this momentum turned into something extraordinary when she hit 18. By 1980, she was earning a six-figure salary, something almost unheard of for a teenager in Hollywood. Her role as Buddy Lawrence on the series Family had already earned her 2 Emmy Awards, and her TV movies were pulling in huge audiences. Producers saw her as a sure thing, someone who could make people tune in just by showing up. Then came her shocking breakthrough in Little Darlings in 1980. She played Angel alongside Tatum O'Neal, and the movie dove straight into a controversial bet between two girls who wanted to see who would lose their virginity first at summer camp. It came out on March 21, 1980, and instantly drew fire from parents, critics, and anyone who thought teen movies should stay innocent. That controversy only made teenagers more curious, and the film crossed $10 million by June. Angel's tough shell and vulnerable center made Kristy's performance stand out, and the line, "Don't let the title fool you," became almost iconic. The attention kept growing, and soon the film was at the center of nationwide debates about what teens should see on screen. Newspapers ran stories about shocked parents, schools banned discussions, and some states even pulled the film entirely. Yet teens kept lining up to watch it. Her chemistry with Matt Dillon in the film fueled tabloid rumors, and gossip columns spun stories about the two dating, even though the truth was simple. They were acting. Still, That energy between them helped the film's popularity grow even more, and people began linking their names in ways that kept the spotlight burning. Critics stepped in as well, and many called her performance one of the most powerful from a young actress in years. They pointed out the way she balanced innocence with maturity, and they returned again and again to the emotional scenes that stayed with viewers long after the credits rolled. She earned award nominations, including a Golden Globe nod for Best Supporting Actress, and even though she never reached the same level of superstardom as some of her co-stars, this film planted her in the memories of an entire generation. By the mid-1980s, Little Darlings had become a cult classic, especially for teenagers who saw themselves in its mix of rebellion, fear, friendship, and curiosity. Kristy's role became the one most people remembered when they thought about that era. It became a story that teenagers kept revisiting and passing down. As her fame continued to build, she stepped into bigger projects, including The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia in 1981. Starring alongside Dennis Quaid and Mark Hamill, she played Amanda Child in a film that blended Southern drama with music and a touch of chaos behind the scenes. What surprised Hollywood most was her salary. At 18, she earned a six-figure paycheck for the role, something rarely given to someone her age. The film itself had a production budget somewhere between $6.1 and $14 million, and while it had mixed success at the box office, her performance once again stood out. Then came a major shift in 1981 when she starred in Neil Simon's Only When I Laugh, a film filled with seasoned actors like Marsha Mason, James Coco, and Joan Hackett. Kristy played Polly, the daughter of a recovering alcoholic actress, and the role demanded emotional weight. She delivered it with a level of maturity that surprised critics who still saw her as the teen from television. The movie earned 3 Academy Award nominations, and her work placed her right beside performers who had spent decades in the craft. Her Golden Globe nomination in 1982 for the same film stunned many because she was only 19. She was competing in the adult category, surrounded by actresses with much longer careers. Seeing her at the ceremony, so young and suddenly part of Hollywood's elite circle, felt like watching someone step into a future that seemed limitless. That same year, she won the Young Artist Award for Best Leading Young Actress for her performance in Only When I Laugh. This meant she was being recognized by both youth-oriented awards and major industry circles at the same time. Very few young performers had ever managed that balance. Her win was celebrated across magazines, youth publications, and entertainment news, and it marked the peak of her early career. Kristy McNichol stepped into one of the most unusual and difficult moments of her career when she starred in Sam Fuller's film White Dog in 1982. And the weight of that project followed her for years. The story centered on a German shepherd trained to attack black people, a horrifying idea that her character discovers only after bringing the dog into her home. The scenes were raw and disturbing, and they showed racism in a way that felt too close to reality for studio executives. Paramount refused to release the movie in the United States, calling it too graphic and too uncompromising, even though Fuller made it as a clear message against racism. He fought back and banned studio representatives from the set because he refused to soften the truth he was trying to show. The film was praised in other parts of the world, yet it stayed unseen in the US for more than 25 years until it finally came out on DVD in 2008. It carried a message that racism can be taught like a skill, and sometimes it becomes so ingrained that unlearning it is almost impossible. Only a few months later, Kristy stepped into something completely different when she made The Pirate Movie in 1982 with Christopher Atkins. It was a bright musical based on The Pirates of Penzance, and it opened in 757 theaters on August 6, 1982. The first weekend brought in a little more than $2.5 million, but the movie struggled after that. It made just under $8 million worldwide and was considered a flop for such a big production. Critics called it silly and weak, and Kristy even ended up with a Razzie nomination for Worst Actress. By its second week, it had already fallen to number 13 at the box office because a re-release of Star Wars pulled crowds away. Still, her voice stood out. The soundtrack reached number 166 on the Billboard 200, and her single, How Can I Live Without Her, climbed to number 71 on the Billboard Hot 100. Even in a rough moment, she managed to leave a mark, but everything she faced on screen was nothing compared to what happened in her private life soon after. In 1984, while filming Just the Way You Are in Paris, Kristy hit a breaking point that changed the direction of her life. She was in her late 20s and had been caring about everyone else for so long that she hadn't realized how much she was losing herself. During filming, she suddenly couldn't hold herself together. She shook constantly. She cried non-stop. She dropped to 96 pounds because she couldn't eat or sleep. Her hands trembled every hour of the day. Production halted for an entire year because she simply could not keep going. Her brother Jimmy stayed with her, but even his support couldn't stop the spiral. The studio tried to soften the truth by calling it a chemical imbalance, but she was in a manic breakdown later connected to bipolar disorder. Years of non-stop work, hiding her sexuality, pleasing everyone around her, and carrying the weight of being a child star had caught up to her. She never returned to finish filming in Paris for months, and this crisis became a turning point in her search for stability and healing. All of this tied back to something she had struggled with since childhood. She had been earning money and taking on adult responsibilities before she ever learned what it meant to set boundaries. She couldn't say no to directors, producers, or even her own mother. She wanted to make everyone happy, and that pressure slowly drained her without her noticing. By the time she reached her late 20s, she had carried so many expectations that her mind simply collapsed under the weight. When she later spoke about it, she helped lift the curtain on the hidden cost of growing up famous and the need to protect mental health early, especially for children pushed into adult worlds they never chose. Even after everything she went through, Kristy found her way back to work for a time. In 1988, she joined the cast of Empty Nest, playing Barbara Weston in a spin-off of The Golden Girls. The show became a big hit for NBC, running from 1988 to 1995 and drawing nearly 15 million viewers at its peak. Kristy appeared in 100 episodes between 1988 and 1992 and quickly became one of the show's most loved faces. But in the 5th season, she left suddenly, and fans were confused because no one gave a clear reason. Her character was written out and replaced by a new daughter played by Lisa Riefel. It felt like a shift in the entire rhythm of the show, and the absence stayed noticeable for the rest of the series. The truth came out later. In 1992, while filming the 5th season, she was privately diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Hollywood rarely talked about mental health at the time, so her diagnosis stayed quiet. She struggled with deep depression, erratic energy, and swings that made it impossible to keep up with the long hours and constant pressure of a weekly sitcom. She relied heavily on therapy and leaned on her brother Jimmy for support. Treatment options back then were limited, and she realized she couldn't continue without risking her health. Leaving Empty Nest was painful, but it gave her space to survive. She returned only once, making a brief appearance in the series finale on June 17, 1995. It was short but meaningful, giving fans a final glimpse of the character they loved. After that, she stepped away from live-action acting completely. She did a bit of voice work for animated projects like Extreme Ghostbusters and Invasion America in the late 1990s, but she never returned to the screen again. In 2001, she officially retired. Her statement at the time made it clear that she had finally chosen her own well-being. She said she had played many roles, but it was time to play herself, and it ended up being the best thing she could have done for her health. A quiet part of her life began around the same time. Kristy had fallen in love in the early 1990s with Marty Allen, a clinical psychologist and entrepreneur who shared her passion for helping young people. They kept their relationship private for almost 20 years because Kristy was still navigating the pressures around her sexuality and her mental health. They continued building a life together until 2012, when Kristy publicly came out at age 49. She said she wanted to help LGBTQ youth who were being bullied or felt alone. Her message was simple. She hoped her honesty would help even one young person feel seen. The announcement was met with love and support, and her courage became another important part of her legacy. Once she stepped away from Hollywood, she found a different kind of peace. She began teaching drama, mentoring young actors, and volunteering for causes close to her heart. She practiced yoga, played tennis, traveled often, and spent time in Hawaii, a place that always made her feel grounded. She loved her miniature dachshunds and lived a life centered on health, kindness, and giving back. She focused on people more than applause. She helped children and animals. She stayed close to her partner, and she discovered that joy could come from quiet days and simple routines.